Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Haley Mitchell-Haugen. I'm the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. And tonight we have gathered to celebrate the publication of Paul Ilechko's latest collection, Post-MOBY. So very excited to have Paul here. And then we have a selection of readers who are also other Sheila-Na-Gig Edition authors or contributors to Sheila-Na-Gig Online, who will be reading a couple of poems featuring especially our summer issue, which is now live online. You can find that. And that wraps up our 10th year of online publication for Sheila-Na-Gig Online. So that's a pretty exciting little milestone for us. All right, so we're going to jump right in with Paul. I'm going to read one of his blurbs on the back of the book. This is from George Franklin. He's one of our board members and one of our authors. And I know he's got a trial he's doing as a lawyer right now. Otherwise, he'd be here. So I'm going to read his little blurb. Paul Ilechko is a poet who surprises. The poems in Post-MOBY immediately impress with their modernist elegance and sharp observation. But then he writes about something so intimate that you have to stop and read that poem all over again. In Down Payment, for example, fishing with his father when he was young, the poet is an ungrateful wretch, pissing and moaning about the cold and dirt and the worms which gave me the creeps and the fish we never caught, unable to comprehend that merely being together was all he wanted and needed. George Franklin writes, Ilechko dazzles. Paul is a British-American poet and occasional songwriter, and he lives with his partner in Lambertville, New Jersey. His work has appeared in many journals. I'm sure many of you have come across his work there. In the Atlanta Review, the Bear Review, Bennington Review, Laurel Review, and Permafrost. And I met Paul first on Sheila-Na-Gig Online in, I believe it was like our third year of publication. How people find me, I never know, but I'm glad he did. And he's appeared a number of times in Sheila-Na-Gig since then. His book, Fragmentation and Volta, was published in 2025 by Gnashing Teeth Publishing. And tonight, again, we are celebrating his book from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions, Post-MOBY. Super excited to have you here, Paul. Why don't you take it away for us?
So I'll be starting with the book at the very beginning because we all put our favorite poems first, don't we? So the very first poem I'm reading is called Joe and the Mirror. It's in memory of Joe Brainard. It's kind of a poem about New York City. It's 1964, and Joe is trapped on the wrong side of the mirror. He's been there all day. This is not the real New York. No corroded brick factory building, stripped bare of all machinery. Graffiti covering the dark facade, pushing him to leave and never return. To stay away from crowds of people, ambling across the Broadway intersection. A hungry drunk as dawn approaches, looking for an all-night diner, with eggs that sizzle over easy upon a slide of grease. The coffee, always black, is burned and bitter. Around each shoddy wooden table, the chairs are backed in fading velvet. This is not a wealthy part of town, where streets are soaked in brilliance at any hour of the day or night. It's silent as the city ever gets down here, as light is seen to finally appear, a pinkish golden haze, which leads inevitably to blue, like any mirror, silvered and prepared, two-dimensional, as is expected, but only passable in one direction. This next one is called Lost at Sea. There is a white figure set into green grass, a giant of a man standing tall. The grass must be mown, the white replaced. There is blue sky over the crest of the hill, blue water in the minds of mariners. I will write you a poem of blue and green, but not a poem of nature, not even a poem of place, but rather a poem of color and how it resonates, cool and forgetful, like a fisherman sleeping on the waves, oilskins creaking amid the stink of bait. And when the seafarer fails to return, like Odysseus, so many years from home, And when Penelope has given up what little hope remained, beneath the brilliant blue of a Greek sky, when all she wants is a body to fill an empty grave, cut into the chalk on a hillside in Ithaca, you will dream of blossoms falling from cherry trees as the boats leave the harbor one more time to search the blue-green vastness of ocean. This next piece is called Days of Wine and Bathtubs. I remember when you used to drink wine naked in the bathtub with a bottle and a glass, a candle burning on the rim, as you gleefully set fire to so many things which had happened in your life, washing yourself clean from the stain of the intervening years, your hair filled with conditioner, ready once again to be dunked and rinsed. And you begged me for acknowledgement, for proof that you were neither judged nor blamed. And I could only welcome you with your bottles and your glassware, with your clean hair and your smoke-stained outerwear, and the musculature of your calves, so well-defined at last, after running away for so very long. The next one is called Flamingos. In this neighborhood, all the gardens have plastic flamingos, she said, the grass trimmed to crooked length. There's an Episcopal church, which is always locked overnight, the curate arriving every morning with his key, opening up to a sad collection of hungry men who've been waiting patiently for an hour or more. Everything here is close to the sea, she said, quiet beaches where children smoke after sunset. Across the main street, from the rows of gift shops and arcades. In winter, it rains, and there is nothing open, except for a bank and a small supermarket. And of course, the fast food chains, where the smokers cough into their fists as they wait in line for pizza or burgers. I used to smoke with the other kids, she said, until my throat became too sore. Nobody else understands why I'm different. They haven't read a book since dropping out of high school. But I have real plans. I'm moving to Milwaukee, she said, where every year has 4 distinct seasons and school is affordable. It's a monochrome world without flamingos, a place to make movies in which nobody speaks, and everything dissolves into the darkness as winter settles in for the duration. This next one's called Flooding. It's a mixture of a couple of different things. It's partly about the floods we had here in my neighborhood from Hurricane Ida back in 21. And it's partly business scene from a movie I once saw by Peter Greenaway called The Z and Two Notes. It's a little bit of both those things mixed together. Oh, and also my niece used to have an aquarium, and one of the fish died, and the snails ate her fish, and it was very, very disturbing for her. So all the things kind of come together in this poem. Flooding. I had a dream, or possibly a memory, of frogs, hundreds of them in a large tank filled with water. Or perhaps it was snails, not frogs, sticking slimy to every surface, and a dark, dank room of dripping water. But the frogs are like jewels, emerald and ruby, whereas the snails are drab and shapeless, eating their way through aquarium trash, with the stink of mold, which spreads blackly between the ceiling and the upper floor, where water once rushed and spilled through random openings. The creeks once burst their banks, a grim time for survivors, shoveling the thick black mud, which stank of decay, replacing floorboards and burning furniture. But the town survived, and as we pass each other in the street, we remember those days when every dream was liquid with fear. That poem is also the inspiration for, you can see anywhere, this artwork. Things are getting blurred here. And my friend Mark painted this, drew this cover for me. It's a beautiful cover. And the next poem is, you've already heard a bit of it, it's called Down Payment. It's the poem about my father. Dad left me enough for the down payment, and that was sufficient. I don't blame him for not having more to parcel out between us brothers. He spent his life welding railroad track, retiring early before his body broke apart, before cancer infiltrated his guts. He took me fishing when I was young, but I was an ungrateful wretch, pissing and moaning about the cold and dirt, and the worms which gave me the creeps, and the fish we never caught. Unable then to comprehend that merely being together was all he wanted and needed. I remember his brill cream and the Vicks vapor rub, the way he smelled when he came home from work, the dirt ingrained in the skin of his hands, and the fumes which permeated his work shirts. My brother sold the house and split the proceeds. We'll probably never go to that town again, never drink in the pub where Dad sat with me, nursing his pint, until my brothers were old enough to take his place, after which he stayed home and slowly grew old. As the river gradually deepened its cleft in the stone beneath the viaduct, and the crows flitted from tree to tree, preparing us for winter. Okay, so the book's called Post-MOBY, and the Post-MOBY section is kind of the core of this book. It's sort of a mixture of narrative and lyric poems, all based on Moby Dick from a more contemporary perspective, looking back at it. So I'm going to read a few of those pieces. The first one is called Call Me. This is the opening section. Call me. It's so long now since I began these travels, knowing nobody, feeling nothing, until the damp autumn weather penetrated deeply enough that the wind might cut like an ice dagger. We left the city through the area you now call Docklands, a silent place in your future, bustling waterfronts replaced by robot machines assembling stacks of containers which reach for the sky. Somewhere beyond this darkening sky, beyond this swirl of oil-slick water, there is the extreme dryness of an inland desert. Call me and take me there. Let the heat harden my bones, leaving me fragile, and I will sleep and dream my way to your impossible future. Call me now. And the next piece is called Setting Off. I only packed one bag, spare shirts and underwear, the usual stuff, not really taking into account the length of the voyage. We set sail from Massachusetts on a clear day, after a last meal at Jake's Lobster Shack, likely to be our last fresh food for quite some time. As we boarded, I heard a loud, crashing sound that resonated in waves, but it seemed nobody else had heard it. It must have been the music of loneliness already playing inside my head, pulses of sadness tracing their way across the billions of neural connections, every path being forged anew for the rest of my life. The next time I was consciously awake, I was in a darkened room, swaying erratically with the gusting wind. My camera was in my bag, and checking it was loaded, I headed up to the main deck. The sun was very low in the sky, and I quickly began to shoot the masts and rigging, all of it silhouetted against the vermilion horizon. It seemed I was looking at the world through old glass, warped and discolored. There were nails everywhere, partially hammered and broken off. The sky amplified my despair at the lacerating fragments. Wherever we were going, there would be palaces and slavery and endless roads of pain. This piece is called Horizon. The line of the horizon would appear and disappear throughout the day, a factor of haze and sunlight, and the color of the waves as they collapsed endlessly into themselves. We heated water until it evaporated, and the steam became a silent scream. It became harder and harder to distinguish dream from reality. Voices would echo from empty cabins, and the shiver would lock itself into your spine and refuse to leave. Still there when the alarm sounded for the morning watch. We became accustomed to wearing more clothing than the climate should have demanded. Down-filled jackets and heavy boots with double socks, even in mid-September. And this is the closing section of Post-MOBY. The Endless Crossing. The story was almost over. It was obvious. Blood gushed down the flanks of the great beast, where it had been penetrated by the metal spear. There was a crust laced with black veins, creating delicate traceries over a grayish-white surface that was roughly pocked and pitted. We had been dragged far across the surface of this earth to such a distant place, chasing across 3 seasons of wildly varying hues, never fully sure what our motives were, but unable to seize the endless forward motion, never knowing where the sun might appear on any given day, once our spinning had left us dizzy and confused. We had ideas which involved the taking of large quantities of fish in nets of artificial rope, the salvaging of hooks and threads, leading us inexorably to a new identity, oriented to magnetic north. We had no flesh to cover our sun-thin bones, the skin clinging desperately to cover our embarrassment. Our voices made sounds like the choking of frogs in smoke-filled swamps. Our vocabulary is now minimal, as we communicated by the stink of our bodies. We had been infected, seized and used as a vehicle for some power we had failed to identify. We crossed the billions of tons of ocean, even as we ourselves were feather-light. Okay, now I'm going to get into the later pieces in the book. And oh yeah, that's going to be this one. Been trained. This piece is called Nature as Syndrome. Day 1 of living in the world of beauty, and already I'm considering a return to the old ways, the so-called normal ways, where the piano is always slightly out of tune. And anyway, nobody is going to listen to you play. Nothing you have done or will do is going to be remembered. So you might as well stop talking about your legacy. You may as well burn your notebooks and rip your paintings canvas and stretcher. You may as well return to that infantile state, that breath-sucking stage of soiled diapers and milky vomit. You may as well hide under your portable home like a wizened turtle and pretend the decaying portrait in your attic is the real you, as you struggle to recall why you ever chose the path lit by a golden light which once seemed to have promised you everything. As you realize the universe is a process which is entropic in nature, is a grindstone which eventually reduces everything to nothing. And the fleece you thought you found at the right hand of God is stained with blood, still tangled in the barbed wire where the lamb was caught and starved to death while you waited. This one's called Portraits of Life. Remember that day in the portrait gallery, those numinous faces, each one so expressive. And remember, it was the hour when children were playing outside. We heard their distant screams and laughter beyond the distorting panes of ancient glass. Out there in the winter light, where naked branches would have cast their abstractions across the playground. It must have been January. The cold was the most intense it ever got that year. Even the geese had disappeared. A day of circumscribed light, which still shone with a hard brilliance. And those children who were most tormented would try to hide beneath the pitiless glare, blending into the patchwork shadows cast by the naked trees, waiting quietly for evening to arrive, waiting for the day to collapse into shards of memory and pain, all swept away by darkness. And we, knowing nothing, sank into the ephemeral thrill of chiaroscuro. And I got one more short one, and then I'll be done. This one's called Beneath the Water. The hunger of your blood, a violet rain beneath the signal lights, and darkness covers the lake where once we shared a bench and a bottle of wine. But once the year was almost done, and we talked about the child and what it meant to lose a future. A child who danced across the grades, a squirming, spinning wonder. The ice had melted on that night, and now fires burn 1,000 miles and 20 years away, blazing across the hillsides, devouring other futures well, we have finally been released by Time. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Paul. Lovely to hear you read these poems. We worked closely in getting the book out, and it's just so great to have it out and share with you. We have been celebrating Paul Ilechko in New Jersey and his new collection, Post MOBY, from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. So check him out. We will segue now into our invited mic portion of the evening, and we're going to Zoom from New Jersey to Florida and hang out with Jennifer Schomburg Kanke.
Hi, thanks Haley, and thanks for letting me read. I'm going to be reading from my book Little Stone, Little Stone that's going to be coming out soon from Sheila-Na-Gig. It's in pre-orders right now until July 12th, so you got just a few more days to get in on that pre-order. And the poems are all either about my experience with ovarian cancer or about celebrities who have had ovarian cancer. And the two poems that I'm going to read tonight focus on the celebrity aspect. And all of the names that you'll hear in this next poem are people who had ovarian cancer during their lifetime. They did not all die from it, though. The last two in the poem were diagnosed in like their 40s and 50s and then lived like another 40 or 50 years. So this is called Exceptional. Throw yourself into work. Marzia Cabrita, 53. Take a rest. Laura Nero, 49. Snuggle down with your one true love. Holly Dunn, 59. Make art from your anger. Andrea Gibson, 49, and Judy Tenuta, 72. Make art from your pain. Linda Gibson, 47. Keep it private. Let them call it secret. Linda Smith, 48. Get the best care money can buy. Gilda Radner, 42. Call 24 doctors before one will even see you. Robert Eads, 53. Be sweet. Cecilia Hart, 68. Stay sassy. Cora, 67. Have faith in God. Loretta Young, 87, and Cassandra Harris, 43. Or Goddess, Celeste Yarnell, 74. Or the bottom of a bottle, Dixie Lee, 42. Do exactly what they tell you. Ellie Mayday, 30. Do whatever the hell you want. Cale Shernan, 63. Or something in between. Dean Brown, 34. Be yourself. Love life. Always go for the biggest laugh. Carol Channing, 97. Be somewhat cruel and quite narcissistic. Pick apart the people you love. Bess Meyerson, 90. But isn't it funny that no matter what, in the end, no one makes it out of here alive? And this next poem is called This Book is Too Long. This book will never be long enough. Every day I find another name to add to my list of poems to write. All the names wait for me in the dark like little memento mori jump scares. A theorist, a painter, an actress I come across quite by accident while following an IMDb rabbit hole that started by watching the original film they've based a new TV show on. The first show based on it failed miserably, but that was 40 years ago. They hope this one is going to have a better run. I could fill 1,000,000 books and still leave someone out. Still forget to talk about 1,000,000 thoughts I've scribbled on the cardboard backings of cheap spiral-bound notebooks I've already filled near up. May I have time to write them all. May you have time to read them all. May our names be on no one's list for a very, very long time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ann Honaker. I'll be reading from Night is Another Realm Altogether, also to be released shortly from Sheila-Na-Gig. This first poem is called Happy. I've carved myself out of consumables. I've bought part of myself online. I live in the narrow light cast by receipts. Receipt and deceit rhyme. This is not a coincidence. I have tall boots, narrow, high heels. I rarely touch my mother, the earth. I spend my time under fluorescent lights examining objects for my project, which is myself. I rarely look up to my father, the sky. Small spirits in my fingers sigh, depart. After I finish myself, but myself is always in the making, I must furnish my outer world with objects that reflect me. The more objects I have, the more I flood the world. I am a tsunami of chic, my house sleek and antique. The ghosts in my knees sigh, float out the nearest window. If I take enough selfies, myself will grow boundless. Can you see me? All of you can see me. Look at my new blouse. I sweep a dress off its rack into my arms. It is me now, too. Small spirits in my radii and ulni groan. They cross dimensions. I have signs all over my house, but don't bother to read them. The important thing is not what they say, but how many I have. My thighs tremble and their ghosts depart with a shriek. The bigger my house is, the more I piss all over you, your cheap car. Your car says you don't care. I care. I care Lexus size, BMW deeply. I had ghosts in my feet, but they screamed and screamed. My shoes were offended. One day the ghosts dissipated. Look how long, how white my receipts are. I have bought the world faster than paper can yellow. Phantoms in my hands weep and fall asleep. The ghost in my chest is gagged. I don't need to hear it simpering. Another package arrives and I grow luminous with power. Maybe I'm happy. Maybe I'm hollow. Maybe I crinkle like money when I walk. Let me kiss you. Only money can buy lips like mine. Remember, I am not an anomaly. Second one is called The Babadook. The monster repeats the final syllable of its name to terrify. It has a childlike face and an awful face. Its frightening face shines like an angel's. In the Bible, whoever sees an angel falls down in terror, prostrate, begging to live after knowing the unknowable. Whoever sees Babadook's hidden face knows the consciousness of black holes. All the stars burn through her mind. The prophet Ezekiel saw 4 beasts with 4 faces each one so terrible to look at it was like staring into the sun. After that, their faces hovered over everything he saw, a holy imprint. Babadook has wings, but the filmmaker only lets us see their enormous shadow. Sometimes, Babadook can be small enough to be a child's secret friend. The beasts steered with their human faces and stared straight ahead as they went. The filmmaker couldn't take the chance that we'd see the wings and know Babadook's real face centered between. If you have another face, like a lion's or an eagle's, it is best to confront the world with your human face. Follow that countenance as if you are human. Drag the rest of you behind. Babadook is rage at living itself. It is incensed by giving of self to others. Don't even glance sideways at your eagle face. You are of the earth, not the sky. Remember Icarus and stare straight ahead, into the world of human things. Babadook knows your lion face, wants to turn it to the front. Babadook knows your ox face, wants to remove the yoke. Babadook has a face like a careless candle. Babadook burns down the pillars of your mind. If you don't think you have other faces, you are a puzzle you've left unsolved. Latch your pieces together, and you'll see. Babadook splays its shine down on the floor burns. Its radiance sounds like a scream, carries its own breeze, hot as a desert. On the apex of buildings, the Greeks engraved the 3 brothers, Zeus of heaven and earth, Poseidon of the sea, and Hades of the underworld. Hades was pictured turned away, sparing people his face. Ezekiel went mad after he witnessed the beast. He buried his underwear in the sand of a riverbank. He laid on his side for 40 days and 40 nights. He chopped his own hair and set it on fire. Once you've seen the Babadook, it never goes away. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Edna Mohler, I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I'm about a half hour from Paul Ilechko. In fact, we're going to read together in person next month. I'm really looking forward to that. Also, Paul, I lived on Nantucket for 7 years, so Moby Dick is very special to me. The first poem I'm going to read is in this summer edition of Sheila-Na-Gig. And I was just thinking a lot about how I felt about the world right now. And I'm envious of people that are clearer about it. The name of the poem is called Blunted. And the epigraph is, it's from Old Norse, blunda, shut the eyes. Like the sea beside her, she has no words. She counts out 10 dark cherries, lines them up like a wall, as if something blood red might shield her, like a heart, that single-minded muscle. She tries to carry on, but waits hours for the relief of sleep, can't think what she could change. She knows these days, thick with smoke and sirens, won't matter in time. That even as it surrounds us, all leaden sorrow is meant for oblivion. It's nothing new, except the gathering abundance of loss. The seas are filling with tears, and now they're rising up. There's that. The next one is from my second book, came out last summer. Let's see if I can get it to happen here. Oh well. It's called Autumn Clears from Kelsey. Sorry. So this poem is in that book, and it was inspired by Mark Doty's display of mackerel. Someone said, write a poem about a bunch of food in the market, and I had fun with it. So it's called Corn at Market. One moment. Bundled together in a single bed, like Chaucer's pilgrims, ears of corn shiver in their emerald coats. The market is freezing, yet the top ones sweat. They suffer the tampering that musses their wiry brown hair as they shelter the pale silk. Shoppers rip, tear, strip them bare, and when finished searching for perfection, toss most back. All night the store lights bore into them, even sunlight's more forgiving. Together they erect a pyramid to honor summer, built to last no longer than a season. They dream of home fields, where the sun kicked up a breeze, and they swayed as one in a slow dance. Long days when mice nibbled their necks, not taking all that much. On the bottom, they feel the weight, the dark, safe covering of kin. They hope for salvation, like anyone who's taken precarious cover, convinced they won't be found, but they are. And when we place them on our fires, their golden spirits rise as steam. They leave us to our anxious shuffling as we wait to be the chosen ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane and Paul and all the readers. This is such a fun event and great to hear everyone read their poems in their voices. My poem, the first one I'll read, is the one that is in the summer issue that just came out, and it's called White Space. Here is where the Christmas tree stood, folded like an umbrella, we laid it to rest. Wire, plastic, fake needles, fake wood. In a worn cardboard box, the tree like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Years ago, as a baby just learning to sit up by herself, our daughter sat under that tree, all aglow with colored lights. There's a photograph. Now, lacking lights and decorations, our living room corner is empty and white. the souvenir ornaments and child-made creations that bear witness to every year of her life abide in the garage, packed in bins. But let's be honest, she won't open them. And my second poem was in Sheila-Na-Gig a couple years ago, and it's called X the Unknown. You might say that I used her. Maybe so, or maybe you're wrong. We were good friends then, young women, me on the young side of young. I pushed her to take diving lessons on the one day a week she had off. Kathy spoke like the Texan she was. I'm a belt and suspenders man, she'd say, which never failed to startle me. Don't gom it up, and I'm tired. I've been ironing all day with a cold iron. But my very favorite, she'd say when puzzled, I feel like I'm solving for X, the unknown. Our suitcases stuffed with bikinis, we flew to Cancun nonstop, caught the ferry to Cozumel. Diving, we were mermaids among angelfish, puffers, sea stars, conchs, night dives to see the curious octopus, wreck dives, shore dives, 100-foot wall dives. In the bars, Las Chicas Gringas demanded La Bamba, tequila, margaritas, mezcal. Drift diving off the boat, reef fish played hide and seek in the coral. At the disco, Kathy would disappear between I want to know what love is and you better be good to me, tiptoe into our room with the dawn. Shimmering schools of young barracuda held steady against the current that pushed us to deep water, the rays and the sharks. The day before leaving, last dive on the boat, Kathy sat on the gunwale, tank and fins on, knife strapped to her thigh, almost ready to pull on her mask, regulator, and roll back into the warm pulsing water, forgetting a moment, thoughts of home, working on solving for X the unknown. All I can say, she was not at the ferry, not on the plane. Arriving in Dallas, I was searched for drugs. They found only sand. Maybe she's driving the dive boat now. Soy Capitan, or slinging drinks in Palapa bars. I mean, what was home for her except that loser boyfriend, lousy job? Me, I'm still waiting for a postcard. She was my friend. It wasn't my fault. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for Sheila-Na-Gig, Haley. And thank you, Paul, for sharing one of my favorite novels, particularly the cytology chapter. My poem, I will read two poems, like everyone. The first one is in the summer issue of Sheila-Na-Gig. It is a nod to Theodore Rothko's poem Dollar, and it is called Dollar Update. I have known the tremendous tedium of teams, the insulting flicker of pixels on lonely screens, aglow like disinterested stacks of mirrors, a dull display of dimensionless desolations, the irredeemable irritation of earphones stuck in the dungeon of Spotify's classic rock, the disembodied vocalizations of pets ignored, shut out, the email set aside, meant to be sent, stuck in the near eternal limbo called drafts. At last, it drops into folders aptly named trash, named spam. The vapid inspirational thoughts for the day, AI generated in predictable phrases, which, rendered in Arial, appear sincere. Then the dark pit into which dreams disappear. The second one takes place in 1993 in Guadalajara, Mexico. And, well, you'll get it. The title says Death Came for the Cardinal. A different sort, of course. Death Came for the Cardinal. At the airport, someone mistook me for Yanni. I should say, as a side, Yanni and I looked a lot better off in those days. Death came for the Cardinal. At the airport, someone mistook me for Yanni, but someone else was already on to me. Maybe it was that side trip to Trotsky's house after being kicked out of Freda Kahlo's for taking those pictures through the windows. Even now, who knows? We were met by Hermano, the most massive man in all of Mexico. In all black, he looked like a welcome shadow, a shade in the hot Guadalajara noon. The kind of bodyguard always on the phone, always patting something in his jacket, always looking past you while looking at the reflection in your eyes, your glasses. He drove fast without stopping. He had passes for every gate in each controlled roadway. All the drama seemed like overkill to me. But just a few months before, he told me, the Cardinal took a hit here on his way to see the Pope. They shot up his limo. The killers mistook him for El Chapo. Or maybe they were government men. No one was sure of the holy man's sin, only that his death came quickly like hot wind. What matters to everyone is it happened by kids, killers, well armed, and mistaken. Thank you.
I have two poems, and they're new ones. A lot's been happening lately. The first one is If Dreams Count. Yeah, I had cataract surgery. Now I wear glasses to read. If Dreams Count. Last night I dreamed of dead, stout, middle-aged women, their hair, faces, bodies, and house dresses smeared with long streaks of white clay. Except for the clay, they looked like grandmothers did in my childhood, but were statues that lumbered about, chatting through shallow water, encircling a Renaissance fountain set in a graveyard. When their streaks needed retouching, they trundled off to the groundskeeper's office. They reminded me of indigenous people who paint themselves white with ash or chalk to signify the next realm, or to connect with ancestors, to hunt or do battle. But these stolid matrons didn't look very spiritual, or like any relatives of ours, nor did they seem eager for action, more like they were pushing through Walmart, marking time like a sundial with arthritis. I'd gotten lost on my way to seek home help for my sister. It was no use asking the grandmas for directions. They couldn't locate their own mausoleum, much less the road out. The day was sunny and tranquil as I sat listening to oldies in my rental car, somewhere in the neighborhood where my sister and I grew up. I sometimes fancied the afterlife might be entered directly from a dream, and was glad to learn upon waking this hadn't happened, for which I said thank you to the reviver of the dead for allowing me to wake this morning in the same world as my sister. The second one is called Speaking Yiddish in Germany, and it was inspired when I read Laurel's book and saw that the title poem of her book, written into the curve of the sea's open throat, was inspired by an article about people speaking Yiddish again in Berlin in bars. And I realized I had read the same article and started a poem about it like a year ago, but hadn't finished. So I went back and finished it. Speaking Yiddish in Germany. People are speaking Yiddish again in Germany, young ones in Berlin bars, according to an article I read in the foreword. Our father spoke Yiddish to travel in Germany back in the 60s. No, what else could he do? He didn't know German, but was eager to converse, and Yiddish worked. My sister learned German and later made fun of her German boyfriend's soft Swabian dialect, which was difficult for her to understand. Swabia was home to Mercedes and Bosch, but to her he sounded like a peasant. She might not have known that well-to-do Swabian housewives were famous for their thrift, and like certain New Englanders, they preferred to be what they called secretly rich. They wore good cloth coats lined with fur that lasted for years. If our mother in California tried to wear her old mink, she'd only look ridiculous and could get hurt. When my sister brought her boyfriend and his parents home to dinner with our mom and dad, all went well at first. But his mother stopped the conversation for a moment when she observed in English everyone could understand, "Life was better under Hitler." Oy, Gewalt, the boyfriend and my sister were mortified. She'd been stared at herself for asking people in his hometown just what they'd done during the war, about their Jewish former neighbors, besides acquiring their houses. For the young, the frame of reference was the Holocaust. The old folks could remember the Weimar Republic, when Germans pushed carts filled with banknotes to buy a loaf of bread. As smoothly as helping her take off her coat, our hospitable father turned to his guest and said, "Avada, of course things were better then. The economy improved." His favorite movie was Some Like It Hot, with men on the run disguised in drag, and he loved to quote its last line, "Nobody's perfect." And there's just a little afternote, if I can say it. After I read this, I was kind of looking into Swabian and noticing it sounded kind of like Yiddish. So I investigated further and learned that it's closer to Yiddish. They're linguistic cousins that came from the same root and kind of grew up side by side, and it's closer to Yiddish. Yiddish is closer to Swabian than German. And Swabian is only 40% understandable by people who speak High German, which they forced the Swabians to learn in high school. So it was a kind of a wonderful synchronicity to find out. Yep, the beauty of poetry.
Right,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you for the lesson there, Catherine, and your reading. And thank you for all of our invited Mike Sheila-Na-Gig readers, and to Paul Ilechko reading from Post MOBY, now shipping from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. You can find Paul's book and all our books in our online journal at SheilaNagigblog.com. Thank you for coming, everybody.